you guys for coming in today. I'm going to pass you out your own copy of the PowerPoint if you want to take notes or follow along with me. Let's go ahead and get started. This presentation is going to be in two different parts. The first part is going to be an action research plan that I've been working on for my master's course, as well as the second part. I'm going to do it in two parts so that we can do the first one and ask our questions and talk about it and get that out of our minds, and so that we can move on into the second part and just have a clearer mind that way. At any time, if you have any questions, just kindly raise your hand, let me know, and I will be happy to address them. Are we good to go?
We're good.
All right. The first part, I've been collecting data for the last 6 weeks of this school year, and I studied the effect of daily point sheets on classroom behavior. So let's get started and see what that's like. The reason I chose this research action plan was because our 4th grade class this year at Bourne Elementary had a lot of behavior problems. I'm sure you've heard about them if you didn't really do that grade with special ed, but you've heard me talk about them. You've heard other teachers talk about it. We talked about it during staff meetings, and we just know that to be a problem with the school. We know some of the problems or some of the reasons why we think this certain grade has these behavior problems. We won't get into that today for confidentiality, but just keep those in the back of your mind as we go through this PowerPoint so that you can hopefully help understand a little bit better. The reason I chose this is because we, as a special ed team at the school, wanted to choose some strategies to help reduce these behaviors that we were seeing. So we were doing it to see the effects that the point sheet had on the behavior, and we were doing it to hopefully learn a couple new strategies that we could do, and if they work, to share with other teachers at other schools and hopefully other districts. The purpose of this study was to help increase positive behaviors. We didn't really expect to get rid of the negative behaviors altogether, but our goal in this was to reduce those negative behaviors and to change those over to positive ones. We also wanted to help students become better learners by allowing their behavior to not disrupt their learning, and not only their learning, but the learning of the other students in the classroom. And we wanted to, once again, generate new strategies just focused on behavior. As part of this action research plan, I had to do a literature review. The first article that I found, here's a site just in case you want to go and look it up on your own, and also I could get you a copy of that article if you want it as well. The name of the article was Teachers' Perception of Disruptive Behaviors. Basically what the article talked about was diversity. A lot of people think of diversity just being racism or ethnicity or religion or gender. But this article, it talks more about how diversity plays a role in bullying. And bullying is a major thing in this school district, not just this school, that it affects the behaviors in our classroom. You've got some students who just bully, and not only is that a negative behavior that we want to stop, but the students that are getting bullied in return start showing behaviors that we don't really want to see at school because they're trying to reach out for help. And this article does a really great job about explaining how diversity plays a big role in behaviors in today's elementary schools. The article also says that 1 in 3 teachers report having more than 10% of students with behavioral problems in their classes. 1 in 3 teachers, that's a pretty large statistic in my mind. We would want that to be a lot lower if we could. That's a lot of behavior problems, and if you think every time we have a behavior problem in our classroom, that's taken away from the learning of our students. That's taken away from the way we present the instruction. Because we're having to stop and get on to someone, and when we pick back up where we're at, a lot of times we lose our train of thought, or we've lost the train of thought of the kids, and we just start all back over. And the article also defines a disruption as a behavior that hinders and obstructs the teaching and learning process. I love how the article included both teaching and learning process. As I go through this presentation, you'll hear me talk about not only does the behavior in the classrooms that we're seeing in this fourth grade affect the teaching, our teaching, it truly is affecting the learning of the students. So just keep that in mind. The second article that I found for my literature review was titled Undesired Teacher Behaviors. This article focused more on some more of the behaviors that teachers exhibit in the classroom to help influence the behaviors of students. The article suggests that the teaching profession, that's either innate or that's taught in life, so that's really important in my mind. It also says that social psychologists believe that attitudes improve and form as a result of three different things: cognitive, emotional, and behavioral experiences. And then my favorite part of this article was teachers' expectations. If we go into a classroom with high expectations, the article says that our behaviors that we see should be lowered. I'm kind of have mixed emotions on that. I know some teachers that are just strict by the book, and you would think that, the term based on what their expectations are, that their class would be in tip-top shape at all times, but that's not necessarily the case at this school. And then I also know some teachers who are like that, and their class does behave well like that. So I just really think it's based on per student in each class, and when you put all those students together along with that teacher's personality, you just get a full circle. And each class is going to be different from next year's or the previous year's class, and you really have to take it year by year. And then here's my reference slide. I won't take time to read all of those, but they're in your copies if you need them. And now we get to actually move forward with the what I call the meat and bread of the presentation. I've worked really hard on this, and I hope that it makes sense and that you really like it and see the effects that it's had on our school. My research question was, what effect do daily behavior point sheets have on behavior in the classroom for fourth grade students? Simple, but yet meaningful. And the reason I chose this was the students in the fourth grade here struggle with behaviors. Almost all students struggle with following directions and using inappropriate words, speaking with adults and peers, but the students here, they have such more more severe behaviors, like pushing in line and stealing food off each other's lunch trays, and just behaviors that are not really typical every day, but yet they're occurring every day. So I chose the fourth grade for that reason. Also, point sheets are something that we've always used within the special ed department, but we've never really branched out and looked to see if they help regular ed students who doesn't have a behavior intervention plan, who doesn't have behavior problems, or who are not EBD. So I kind of picked this to help see. I wanted to see the effect on regular ed students as well as special education students. And then I also wanted to see that if the behaviors in the classroom could hinder the learning of all students. So what my participants boiled down to was there was a total of 36 fourth grade students that ranged from ages 9 to 10. There were less boys than there were girls. 3 students had an IEP. Those IEPs were a wide range spread. We had one for mild mental disability, one for a specific learning disability in reading and writing, and one student for autism. And then also that student with autism also had a behavior intervention plan as well. So a point sheet for that student had already been in effect. That student was used to it. It follows him from school year to school year. So that was important to know. We also had 4 students out of the 36 that were in response to intervention, tier 3, almost close to being referred for special education. And then it's important to know that 14 students were scoring at grade level or higher. Just keep that in mind. So pretty much the only instrument we used for this study was a daily point sheet, and I've got an example of that coming up soon. You should all be familiar with it, but if you're not, it's a simple rating scale, and you score students based on intervals of time throughout the day. So let's see what that looks like. I know it's kind of hard to see, but if you just look, these are time intervals, and they go in 30 minutes, starting at 7:30, which is typically what time students arrive, to 8, and then 8 to 8:30, and so on, and it goes down to the end of the day. In this section, you can modify this the way you want it based on students, but we kept it all the same for purposes of this study. In this column, they're getting scored on following directions within 1 minute. And so you either rate them a 2, a 1, or a 0. Now a 2, which is the highest you can get, means you had 0 incidents of misbehavior for that 30-minute interval. If you score them a 1, then they had 1 to 2 incidents in that 30 minutes. So maybe they didn't get started within a minute, and you had to say, Johnny, pick up that pencil and get started. Well, that was 1 incident, so immediately they're already going to score a 1 for that 30-minute interval. And then, of course, if you score a 0, that was greater than 3 incidents in that interval. And then we had a section for students transition without inappropriate behaviors, and we had one for raising hand before yelling out. What I like about these point sheets is that if we move forward with this plan, say this school year, if you don't want to do it in whole class and you only want to do it on a certain student, this is a Word document that we can email to teachers. And you can change this based on what that student needs to work on. And then just keep everything else the same, print it out, you're good to go. There's also a room for comment sections over here. Some teachers choose to send this home and get parents to sign it if the student's had a bad day. Vice versa, the parents can write comments, send it back to the teacher. Then you just tally up how many points the student got and average it out of 90 points, get the percentage of what that student's behavior was for the day. Any questions on how that point sheet works?
No.
Like I mentioned, that's a Word document. It's easily downloaded. You can get it through a flash drive or email. You can change the information based on student needs. You can print them out, keep them in a binder. You can use that as progress monitoring if you're having a student, maybe you're looking at just behavior and you're wanting to do referral for response to intervention. You can keep your hard copy at school, make a copy, send it home to the parents if the parents really want to be involved. It's easy accessible and it's shareable between colleagues. You know, no one says that point sheet has to stay within that grade. Share it. That's what it's here for, and that's what we want it to be used for. It's filled out every 30 minutes, tallied up to find the percentages for the day, and I've already went over the rating scale. You either get 2 points, 1 point, or 0 points. So here is, I've explained it all. In this process, I've been collecting the data, and I'm ready to chart it and tally it up, analyze it, and here are the results that I found. I did this for a 6-week period, so I've broken this down over the next 3 slides. I started it at week 1, then I'll do a mid-assessment at week 3, and then I'll do a final one at week 6, and you'll see that as we move forward. So basically what this says is that 60% of students scored between 80% to 100%, which is benchmark. As we go forward, just know that we want the students to be at 80% or higher with their behavior every day. Some students will score higher than that. There'll be plenty of students who score lower than that, but we would like for them to be at 80%. So week 1, start now. They're not used to the point card. They're showing these behaviors. We've given it to them. We're taking off. That first week, 60% of students scored benchmark. 20% of students scored between 50 to 79%. 15% of students scored 30 to 49%. And we had 5% of the 4th grade who scored below 30%. So let's see what kind of improvement or maybe we didn't show improvement at the midweek. So week 3 was our midweek assessment. We went from 60% of students scoring benchmark, and now we're at 68%. And then 24% of students scored between 50% to 79%, which was also an increase. 5% of students scored 30% to 49%, which is a decrease, but that's a good decrease because those students who went down there are fitting into these categories up here. And then we went from 5% to 3% scored below 30%. So let's move on to week 6. So this was at the end of the data collection for this research plan. We started out with 16% of students meeting benchmark. At the end of 6 weeks, we were up to 79% of students. 18% of students were between 50 to 79%. 2% of students between 30% and 49% accuracy. And only 1% of 4th grade students were below 30%. And I will go ahead and say that 1% was the student with the autism, with the daily intervention plan. A couple other students who were also special ed. So the summary for that data that I just presented was that based on those results, students were able to improve their daily behavior for a 6 weeks period based on the point sheet. We also gathered that every single student showed growth. Even if they didn't meet benchmark, they have showed growth from one percentile to the next. We also learned that parents were impressed with the behaviors. We had some call in and talk with the teachers about what they were seeing at home, how the behaviors had improved at home. We had some come in at parent-teacher conferences and was saying, you know, such and such really enjoys that point sheet. You know, we left it at home today and had to turn all the way back around to go get it. So that was a good thing. I found this really interesting. We learned that behaviors seem to occur most during transition times, such as lining up, bathrooms, specials, or lunchtime. I guess in the back of our mind, we kind of always knew that was a high time for behaviors, but to see it in writing and to see which students it was coming from and what exact behaviors were happening, we started to see a pattern over time. We learned that the students really liked the point sheets. They loved keeping up with them. They loved being responsible for them. It made them responsible for their behaviors. And I think, in my opinion, that's one reason we saw behaviors and the percentages go up, is because they could look and see, oh, I scored a 0. Mom's not going to be happy with that. The most common types of behaviors included talking out of turn, tattletelling, not raising their hand, and we all know the familiar sitting in your chair, raising the front 2 legs up, and rocking on the back 2 legs. All of those behaviors were common. Almost all the students got in trouble for that. But the behaviors that only occurred minimal amounts of time included pushing one another in line and stealing one another's supplies. So we were able to pinpoint which behaviors we really needed to work on with which students and in which classes. So at this point, I just kind of want to gauge your interest on the research plan and together just kind of talk with you about where do we go from here? What would you like to see be done with this? Do you have any suggestions or any questions? And together just kind of brainstorm and get a plan together and see what we can come up with. So do you have any questions or anything you would like to talk about?
One of the things that I really enjoyed in the presentation was the graphs. I like being able to see the data and see it displayed. One of the things that I was most impressed was the third tier, which was the 30 to 49% of misbehavior. We had a reduction of 15% all the way down to 2%. And that seemed to be the largest area's reduction of that third tier. As far as next steps, it's clear that you've shown some growth and it's led to an increase in positive behavior for the students. So I believe the next step would be discussing this research with the principal and possibly implementing it into other grades prior to 4th grade and even on up continuing to 5th grade, and getting the students used to this behavior plan prior to the 4th grade. And one of the things that I really like that you mentioned is it allows the students to take ownership of their own behavior. They get a tangible object where they can see their behavior in the classroom. And I feel like that does allow them to take much more ownership of their behavior within the classroom.
Alright. I'm glad, I think we're on the same page. Coming into this, knowing my results before I presented it to you, I was hoping that you guys felt the same about moving forward with this. I am A-okay with sharing this with the principal. I'm ready to present it to her and gauge her reaction. I'm hoping that she'll feel the same that we do. And I just wanted to make a comment about what you said about my biggest reduction being those tier 3 students. And I just wanted to point out that majority of those students in that tier that showed improvement in their behavior are our GAP kids. Those
Excellent.
are students who this needs to have been worked with them before. These are our free and reduced students who come from lower poverty and who a lot of times aren't given the chance to show an increase in their behavior. And with these point sheets, they were given that opportunity and they ran with it, and the results show. So just wanted to point that out because I thought that was really interesting.
Also, one other question. Did you see a correlation between the behavior of those students and then as their behavior increased, a growth in academics as well? I know there's been a lot of research done on behavior and its correlation with academics, so I was just wondering if you had noticed that trend with this research.
I don't have hard data to back up my opinion on that, so I cannot say yes for sure or no for sure, but what I can tell you in my honest opinion is yes. You know, we didn't give a pre-assessment on, say, a math test and then at the end give a post-assessment and see if those scores went up or down. But in my mind, what I know that those students are capable of doing and what the regular ed teacher knows, we had a discussion, and yes, not from all students, but there were some students who showed a huge improvement in their academics. And I think that's a really good point that maybe we should bring up to the principal. You know, and next year, do a different research plan and study that research question.
It would definitely be something that would be easy to track with the behavior sheet already in place and see the growth in their academics as well as behavior.
I think we've got a good plan moving forward. Couple last things to say before we wrap up and move on to part 2. For me personally, doing this research action plan, it allowed me to see the effects of the point sheets. Truly, that's what I wanted to see. Were they a waste of time, or were they really worth doing? Were they helping? It allowed me to see the amount of behaviors in the 4th grade, and more specifically, the types of behavior. I got to pinpoint which kids. Conley learned a little bit more why they show those behaviors.